Keith Urban, the country music legend, wasn't always the man you see on stage. His journey was shaped by heartache, resilience, and battles that most people will never see. This is the story you won't hear from the red carpets or sold-out arenas. Keith Urban's life has been anything but easy. From a childhood marred by tragedy and a career path paved with rejection, he's fought for every inch of success. Today, as a Grammy-winning superstar, Keith has found peace, but his road to redemption was far from smooth. Get ready to uncover the painful moments that have shaped one of the most influential country artists of our time. Born on October 26, 1967 in Wangard, New Zealand, Keith Urban didn't come from the typical country star background. The world may know him now as one of country music's greatest artists, but his road to fame was filled with emotional baggage, adversity, and struggles that could have easily broken him. Yet, here he stands today, stronger than ever. Keith's story is one of grit, resilience, and the transformative power of music. But it's also the story of a boy who went through unimaginable pain, who fought through the darkness, and eventually found a light that he didn't even believe was possible. This journey wasn't about seeking fame, it was about survival. And now, in his late 50s, Keith Urban is not just surviving, he's thriving. In this video, we'll dive deep into Keith's life, the good, the bad, and the truly heart-wrenching. From his early years marked by tragedy and loss to his struggles with addiction and eventual redemption, this is the story of Keith Urban that most people don't know. By the end of this video, you'll see Keith in a whole new light, not just as a country music icon, but as a man who learned how to rise from the ashes. A humble beginning. The struggles of Keith Urban's childhood. Keith Lionel Urban's early years were far from glamorous. The son of Robert Bob Urban and Mary Ann, Keith's family moved from Wangara, New Zealand, to Cobble, Queensland, Australia when he was only 2 years old. While this move was supposed to signify a new start, it instead marked the beginning of a series of heartbreaking events that would shape Keith's life in ways no child should ever have to experience. At the age of 9, a tragic event would change the course of Keith's life forever. One fateful night, the Urban family's home was destroyed by fire. The flames claimed everything they owned: photos, clothes, personal belongings, and left them with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Keith later recalled that the only thing they had left was each other, and the kindness of strangers who showed up with boxes of clothes. But the fire outside wasn't the most painful part of Keith's childhood. What happened behind the walls of that modest home was much more destructive. Keith's father, Robert, was a man of two extremes: a passionate lover of country music and an unpredictable alcoholic. The same man who introduced Keith to the guitar also introduced him to fear, anger, and neglect. Keith's childhood was filled with emotional scars, and his father's erratic behavior only worsened the turmoil. In later years, Keith would openly admit that he didn't remember his father ever telling him he loved him. Those words weren't just sad, they were devastating. A child's deepest longing is for love and affection, but Keith's was met with silence, rage, and physical aggression. His home was a battleground, not just emotionally but physically as well. Despite this, Keith found solace in music, something his father inadvertently introduced him to. When Keith's father placed a sign in the window of his convenience store seeking a guitar teacher for his son, it marked the beginning of a new chapter. It was a fragile, rare gesture of love from a father who didn't know how to show affection, but it would change Keith's life forever. This search for a guitar teacher led him to Sue McCarthy, the woman who became his first mentor. Music was no longer just a pastime for Keith. It became his shield, his escape, and his voice when nothing else could speak for him. Keith's passion for music grew exponentially from that point on. He started strumming a ukulele at age 4, and by the time he was 6, he was holding a guitar with an intensity that suggested a deep need for something to cling to. Music was no longer just an interest, it was a lifeline. It was in the chords of his guitar that Keith found comfort. Music allowed him to speak what he couldn't say aloud and soothe the pain that consumed him. It was his salvation. As Keith grew older, his love for music deepened. He began performing at local music festivals, especially the prestigious Tamworth, and collaborated with other Australian talents like Jenny Wilson. His performances were raw, filled with heartache and a yearning for escape. In his teenage years, Keith began playing in bars and clubs, his parents acting as his chauffeur, driving him from a gig to gig. Despite the acclaim he received, Keith still felt the emptiness that only music could attempt to fill. Music was always there for him, but the journey wasn't easy. His childhood had hardened him, and he carried with him the emotional scars of his upbringing. At 15, Keith's performances became bigger, but so did the void in his heart. Despite the accolades and recognition, his childhood traumas never truly left him. But Keith didn't let that stop him. His raw talent couldn't be ignored. He started winning prestigious awards, including the coveted Golden Guitar at Tamworth. Yet, it wasn't enough to erase the loneliness. He continued to play for survival, not for fame. Music was his safe haven, his escape from the reality of his past. But as much as music gave him solace, it also highlighted the deep, unresolved wounds from his childhood. Keith's early years as a musician were difficult, to say the least. He spent years playing in dive bars, honing his craft in places too small for someone with such enormous talent. But this grueling experience taught him resilience, and it forged the foundation for the artist he would eventually become. He wasn't just playing for an audience, he was playing for his own survival. By 1992, after years of grinding in small venues in Australia, Keith took the biggest risk of his life. He moved to Nashville, Tennessee, the heart of country music, with nothing but his guitar and dreams of making it big. His decision was more than just a career move, it was a spiritual leap of faith. Keith didn't know anyone in Nashville, he didn't have a safety net. But he had music, and that was all he needed. However, Nashville greeted him with indifference. It was a city filled with artists, all fighting for the same spot. Doors didn't just close on Keith, they slammed. He played in the background for other artists, wrote songs that others would perform, and spent years in obscurity, wondering if it was all worth it. His band, The Ranch, showed promise but never caught the attention it deserved. Keith's dream was slipping away, and the weight of his past continued to haunt him. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Music was no longer just his passion, it was his oxygen. Keith Urban wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing freedom. He wasn't interested in the applause of the crowd, he was trying to heal. His battles with self-doubt, addiction, and the trauma from his childhood were constant. Yet he pushed forward, despite the rejections and disappointments. In 1999, after 7 years of fighting for recognition in Nashville, Keith finally got his break. He released his self-titled American debut album, and with it, the song "But for the Grace of God" hit #1 on the country charts. It was a victory that was years in the making, and it felt like a resurrection. Keith Urban, the boy from Queensland who had played through heartbreak, finally tasted the triumph he had fought so hard for. But that victory didn't just represent success, it represented survival. Keith's rise to stardom was anything but easy. It was a long, hard road that led him through rejection, doubt, and personal demons. But his breakthrough didn't just change his career, it marked the beginning of a meteoric rise. The song "But for the Grace of God" was only the beginning. Keith went on to release hit after hit, each one more successful than the last. In 2002, his track "Somebody Like You" became a massive hit, and the song was declared the biggest country hit of the decade by Billboard. By 2004, Keith Urban wasn't just a country artist, he was reshaping the very fabric of the genre. His album "Be Here" produced multiple chart-topping hits like "Days Go By" and "Making Memories of Us." His ability to blend country with rock and pop elements garnered him both critical acclaim and commercial success. His tours sold out and his albums went triple platinum. He was a star. But the success didn't come without its toll. Despite the fame and fortune, Keith still struggled with his past. He battled with imposter syndrome, feeling like the boy from Queensland who was never good enough. He questioned his worth and whether he truly deserved the success he had worked so hard for. But despite the darkness that still lingered, Keith pushed forward. He kept creating, kept performing, and kept fighting for the life he always dreamed of. Keith's success didn't come from chasing fame. It came from learning to live in the present, to embrace his pain, and to build a life with the people who mattered most. Through his struggles and triumphs, Keith found the redemption he had been seeking for years. As Keith approaches his 60s, his story isn't just about music, it's about resilience, healing, and finding peace. Today, Keith Urban isn't just a country legend, he's a symbol of strength. His net worth has skyrocketed to over $75 million, and he continues to release music that speaks to his soul. Keith has built a legacy of perseverance, showing the world that no matter how broken you are, you can always rise again. He's now the man he always wanted to be, a loving father, a devoted husband, and an artist who no longer chases fame but lets the music come to him. Keith's legacy isn't just about chart-topping hits or Grammy Awards. It's about the life he's built with his family, the love he's shared, and the lessons he's learned along the way. Keith Urban is not just a survivor. He is a man who has found peace. Through the chaos, pain, and heartache, Keith has built a life that is grounded in love, redemption, and resilience. His story proves that no matter how difficult the journey, there is always hope for a better tomorrow. If Keith's story has touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and redemption.